Hey everybody, welcome to the Getting Started at Crossref webinar. This is a monthly webinar we do. It is geared towards new members of Crossref. I'm sure if you're not a new member, there's still things you're going to learn here, but just to say it at the front, this is targeted for folks who have just joined Crossref. The brief agenda overview is that we are going to be talking about the benefits and obligations of your new Crossref membership. We'll be talking a bit about why metadata is so important. We'll be talking about the ways that Crossref DOIs are structured, so your DOI prefix and suffixes. We'll be talking about displaying your DOIs and how to get started with reference linking, which is including the DOIs in the references of the articles that you publish. Then we're going to be jumping into talking about the different methods that we offer for actually registering your DOIs, that is, submitting the metadata and the DOIs themselves to Crossref so that your DOIs work. We'll talk about invoicing briefly at the end, how payment for your content registration fees works. And then we'll also provide some resources near the end of the presentation for how you can get additional information. We're going to try to have about 15 minutes at the end of this presentation for questions, so we will talk about those then. We have three of us here today from Crossref to chat with you. I am briefly going to turn on my camera if I can find the button to do that. There it is. Hi, everyone. I'm Colin Knopschwin. I'm a member support specialist with Crossref based in Oakland, California.
Uh, Hello, I am Kathleen Lushak. I am a technical support specialist and I am currently based in Cleveland, Ohio.
Hey everyone, I'm Shane Smolian. I'm on the technical support team like Kathleen, and I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A and chat for this webinar. If you have any questions, please try to add them to the Q&A rather than the chat because that makes it much more likely that we'll see them.
Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, as Shane just mentioned here, please do use this Q&A function, the little dialog box with the question mark in it. If you have any questions, and Kathleen or Shane or I will answer those either in the Q&A feature or live in the chat or in the presentation here. You can also react with the react function, and you may be able to do live captions with the show captions function on Zoom. A few quick notes as we're getting started here. Yes, this session is being recorded. Yes, we will be sharing it with everyone via email later. That is the number one question we get in these webinars. So don't worry. If you want to share this with other folks at your organization, you will have the opportunity to do so after the fact. Again, please use the Q&A feature, not the chat feature. We'll leave 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the session. Per our company policy for the privacy of members and everyone in this meeting, AI transcribers and note-taking tools are not permitted, and we expect everyone to follow our code of conduct, which is available at the link there, crossref.org/code-of-conduct. All right, let's jump right into it. So by now, we expect that you are probably already a member of Crossref, which means that you will have received an email from the Crossref membership team with your new DOI prefix. That's 10 followed by five numbers followed by a slash. That email will have also included instructions for setting the password for your new Crossref depositor credentials, usually based on your technical contact's email address. And that email also includes information about the various different content registration methods that we offer. That email also mentions the billing cycle information. So we bill for content registration quarterly. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the very end of this presentation. And it briefly mentions the voting process. All Crossref members get a vote in our annual board election, and the email briefly mentions that as well. You'll also start receiving periodic emails from us with information about the reports that you'll start receiving as a Crossref member. So you'll get reports about successful and failed DOI resolutions related to your membership, as well as a couple other reports that you'll start receiving. So let's talk a bit about the benefits and obligations of your membership. Being a member of Crossref allows you to create persistent identifiers, that is DOIs, of course, for every object that you register metadata for every object that your organization publishes. So every journal article that you publish, every book chapter, every report, etc., that your organization is publishing. By registering your research objects with us and creating DOIs and comprehensive metadata records, your organization becomes a part of this globally connected network of scholarly research, which grows every year. We currently have over 24,000 members from over 166 different countries who have registered over 170 million items with us. So we have quite a few DOIs. This DOI and metadata record is then globally shared with hundreds of tools and thousands of users via our free online open APIs, which makes your publications more discoverable all the world around. This metadata that our members provide also powers a variety of additional services that we've developed at Crossref, including tools like cited by and similarity check. Crossref is governed by a board of directors, which is made up of representatives from our membership organizations, and all of our members are able to vote in those elections as well as stand for our board if you're interested in participating in the governance of Crossref. Now, of course, in addition to the benefits of membership come some obligations as well. You are now part of this community with every other member of Crossref. And so you have some obligations to Crossref, but it's not just to us as an organization, it's to everyone else within this scholarly community. As a Crossref member, you should be registering DOIs and metadata records for everything you publish going forward. Registering a DOI isn't optional. All of your articles or book chapters or whatever it is you publish going forward should have a DOI registered. And you need to make sure that you register only records for content that you are the publisher of. When you register a DOI, you're taking on long-term responsibility for stewarding that material and the metadata about it. And your organizational name will show up in the metadata as the publisher of that work. That means, for example, that if you are a university, you should only register DOIs for articles in the journals that your university publishes. You should not be registering DOIs for articles in journals published by other organizations where university affiliated authors are publishing their articles, for example. Once a DOI has been registered for an item like an article, then the DOI needs to remain the sole unique identifier for that article forever. If the article moves to a new website or if it's acquired by a different publisher, and if it already has a DOI, then the metadata associated with that DOI needs to be updated to reflect the new publisher and to point to the new landing page. But the DOI itself, the string 10 point whatever slash suffix, doesn't change. So it's really important that you do not register new DOIs for materials that already have a DOI. If you take on a journal from another Crossref member and they've already registered DOI records for the existing articles in some older issues of that journal, we, the Crossref membership and support teams, can help you transfer ownership of those journal titles to your new membership. And you should continue to use and to display all of the existing DOIs that have already been registered. We can also help you get access to the existing metadata for those DOIs. Another obligation of membership is that you have a unique landing page for each of your materials for which you're registering a DOI. So each article, each book chapter, etc., and that each of these, and that you're displaying DOIs in line with our display guidelines, which I'll talk more about in just a moment. Another obligation of membership is that you undertake reference linking. So this is the inclusion of DOIs in the references for the cited by sections of any articles that you are publishing. You're obligated to maintain and update your metadata records for the long term. So if you submit incorrect, you misspell an author's name or something in the metadata record, you can just resubmit the metadata for that DOI to update that. And you are expected as a Crossref member to pay your invoices on time, both your annual membership invoices and your quarterly content registration fee invoices. So those are the benefits and obligations of your membership. Let's jump right into talking about why we think that metadata is so important. First, what is metadata? Basically, metadata is just the data about the things that you're publishing. So things like the article title, the journal that the article is published in, the authors, their ORCID IDs, their affiliations, their ROR IDs. Metadata also includes things like funding information, who the funder is, and if there's a grant ID or award number. Metadata can also include relational metadata, so things like if there was a preprint or if an article has a translation published in another language in another journal, or if there is an update, such as a correction or a withdrawal or a retraction. All of this can be reflected within the metadata that you register with us. Metadata can look like this. We store it in our system in a format called XML, but you don't need to worry about that too much, as most of you will probably be using a helper tool, one of Crossref's helper tools, to send us your metadata. And that tool is going to transform the metadata you send us into XML behind the scenes. But it is important that you know this, as it means that all of our members give us their information in a consistent and machine readable way. We then make this XML, this metadata available worldwide through our free APIs so that everybody in the world, both humans and systems, can use it for a variety of purposes. This is one of the benefits of the Crossref membership. So let's here. I mentioned our API. This REST API is relied on by a large part of the research information community, beyond just Crossref, beyond just scholarly publishers. We actually receive around 2 billion requests every single month through these APIs for our members' metadata. So when you're contributing metadata to Crossref, it's not just going into a database and sitting there. It's being used all of the time for manuscript tracking, for annotation, author profiling, library discovery, metrics, analytics, scholarly social networks. It's used by tools like Web of Science and Scopus and organizations such as DOAJ to make their review process run smoothly. So that's the reason that that you're submitting metadata to Crossref. Let's take a look now actually at what your DOIs are going to look like. So this is the basic structure of a DOI, https://doi.org/prefix/suffix. The DOI directory or DOI resolver is the red bit there, the doi.org. That's just what makes the DOI a resolvable, actionable item. So it becomes clickable and resolvable as a URL. The prefix in the light blue there, 10.13.003, that is what Crossref assigns each member. So your prefix is unique to you, to your membership, and only one member at a time can register DOIs on that prefix. And then the suffix is something that you assign yourselves. So you can use any suffix pattern of your choosing. We strongly recommend that you use an opaque suffix where there's not human readable information contained within that suffix. And just the reason that we suggest that is that things can change over time. And we don't want the suffix of this unique persistent identifier to be reflecting information that can theoretically change. Sorry, I got a bit ahead of myself here with this. The DOI prefix, one prefix can be used for all of the materials you register. So we'll only be assigning your membership a single DOI prefix. You can start registering new DOIs for, multiple journals if you publish multiple journals or multiple book titles or whatever the case may be at any time. You don't need to contact Crossref to get started registering DOIs for a new journal, a new book, with the exception of if the journal has already been registered by another publisher, in which case the membership team will have to help you transfer the existing DOIs, the existing journal record, over to your new membership. And there's no limit to the number of DOIs that can be registered on a particular DOI prefix, on a particular Crossref membership. The only limit, of course, is the number of objects that you publish. So since you should only be registering DOIs for your own publications, that sort of reflects the limit of what you should be registering DOIs for. There's also no minimum. If you only publish one report a year, then that's fine. You can use your DOI prefix to register DOIs for that one report every year. Your DOI suffix, as I mentioned, is the final part of the DOI string here. We encourage you to use opaque, randomly generated suffixes. We also encourage suffixes to be simple and short. This is important because anyone who's citing this article will be including this DOI in their citation, hopefully, and it can be a little inconvenient for folks if they're citing really, really long DOIs. It can take up a lot of space in journal reference sections. So that's why we encourage the short and opaque DOI suffix there. I mentioned one of the obligations of Crossref membership is that you will be displaying DOIs and linking your references. So our DOI display guidelines are that DOIs are always displayed as a full URL link like this above here, https://doi.org/DOI. They don't need to be preceded by DOI colon like this. And we recommend that you use HTTPS rather than HTTP. One of the obligations, as previously mentioned, of your Crossref membership is that you have a suitable landing page for each thing you're registering a DOI for. The landing page should include basic bibliographic information about whatever it is the DOI relates to. So in this example, we see the article title, we see the journal title, we see the author's names, we see some keywords as well as an abstract. Keywords and abstract are not mandatory for a landing page. We also see the DOI itself displayed as a URL there, and we see a way to access the full text, that PDF link in this example at the bottom right corner. If the article is open access, the landing page can just be can it also include the PDF embedded in it, for example, or if your content is closed access, if it's paywalled, then you can include a link where the hypothetical reader can purchase your article for rent or for download. Each thing you register a DOI for needs a unique landing page like this. We generally try to cover this in the application process, but in case we haven't done that yet, do make sure that you have a landing page for each thing you're registering a DOI for before you actually register the DOI for it. This is an example of a landing page that would not be suitable. Here you can see a bunch of different articles in this first issue of this journal. And each of those only includes a download link right to the PDF. So PDF would not be a suitable landing page. We would need an individual web page for each article here. Okay. At this point, I am going to switch off here, and I believe that Kathleen is going to take the next section here. I am going to jump into the chat and start answering some of your questions.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see my screen now. Does that look good to everyone? Can you hear me okay?
All good.
Awesome. All right. Well done keeping to your time, Colin. I will try to follow in your footsteps and move us along so we have time for questions at the end. So I'm going to talk a bit about ways to register your metadata records. So let's get started with that. We have, as we said, when Crossref members register their content with us, they include much more than just the DOI and that resource resolution URL. You'll want to include a range of other metadata, which includes things like the article title, the journal name, authors, affiliations, ORCID IDs, things of that nature. Metadata about all the content that's been registered with Crossref is held in our system as XML. You can register this content in various ways. You could send us XML files directly, but we realize that not everybody is able to do that. So we also have helper tools available. These helper tools provide an online form where you can type in your information about your articles, and then our system turns that into the XML behind the scenes. So if you are not comfortable with XML, that's totally fine. And we have ways to create that for you. Our web deposit form and our new metadata manager are two examples of helper tools that maybe you've already started using. And for our members who host their content on the OJS platform from PKP, there is a Crossref plugin to help you add in your metadata and register that with Crossref. And we'll talk about both both the OJS plugins and, well, actually, we're going to talk about OJS plugins next, and then we'll talk about Metadata Manager as well. So because so many of our organizations use OJS, several years ago, Crossref and PKP began a collaboration to create a less technical method for OJS users to register metadata with us and to help publishers and journals take advantage of Crossref services. We started with a DOI XML export plugin that just sends basic metadata directly to Crossref from OJS. So these are some of the plugins that we have set up for OJS 3.3 and OJS 3.4. You can set up a DOI plugin to add your prefix and the Crossref XML plugin. Those are available on 3.3, and then for 3.4, you can enable a Crossref Manager plugin. And then in distribution settings, you can add your prefix and enable automatic deposits, things of that nature. We also have a references plugin that's available from 3.1.2 onwards. In the references plugin, we'll use the Crossref API to check against plain text references and locate possible DOIs for articles. That plugin will also allow the display of reference lists on the article landing page in OJS and deposit them as part of your metadata deposit. And just a reminder that linking references is a requirement of Crossref membership. So we do have some documentation on how to register your metadata with a few different versions of OJS. Right now we have 3.3 and 3.4. So there are some detailed videos and screenshots that can help you get started. We are currently actively working on recording a video for OJS version 3.5 as well. So if you are using that version, we will hopefully soon have some more documentation for you. PKP is also a great source if you need extra help with documentation, as it is their software. So here's just one of the most common questions we get. So this is a bit specific, but maybe this can help some of you who have come across this problem, or if you are thinking of using OJS, just to give you a heads up, this is a very common question we get into support. When you become a Crossref member, you receive a set of credentials that allow you to register content with us. Those credentials need to be properly configured in the OJS plugin if you're using it. There are two types of credentials that we currently use in Crossref. One is role credentials, which contain only your role and password, and that's the most common among our sponsored members. Your sponsor will either provide you with the password so you can configure the OJS plugin yourself, or they may help and do that for you. For most of our independent members, you receive user credentials, and that means that you and each of your colleagues have your own emails connected to a shared role that belongs to the organization. So this role or username, as the OJS plugin calls it, is usually 4 to 5 letters, and it should be entered after your email address and a slash. So the main problem we see that happens is when you try to set this up, you'll just many people will only put in their email address and then their username and then their password, and this causes an error. What you'll actually need to do is, as shown in the screenshot with where the blue arrow is, you would enter your email address, a slash, and then your role that is affiliated or associated with your organization. Obviously, if you have questions about this, you can always email us at support@crossref.org and we can help you get started. Additional OJS Crossref plugins aside from that content registration plugin, we've also co-developed some additional ones for other metadata. We have support for reference linking and depositing references. We have a similarity check, also known as Authenticate is the software used, and the funder registry. These vary by version, which is why it's good to make sure that you're up to date. I know that specifically support for similarity check is only available on some of the later versions. PKP is continually working with Crossref to improve the level of overall DOI export support provided within OJS. So these are always being worked on and improved. But please do note that OJS is run by PKP and not us here at Crossref. So keep in mind that while we can help you with deposits, both successful and failed, we are not able to provide direct support in setting up your OJS instance. There's links here to the OJS documentation through PKP, as well as their support forum, which is very active, and you may be able to find answers to your questions there. And now a little bit more about our new metadata manager, which is another one of our helpful tools. It is our newest tool, and we're still working on it. Right now, it can only be used for journal articles and grants, but very soon other content types will be available. So we will let you know as soon as those become available, but I know our development team is working on those. At the top of the page, you can see how to access the form. Or on the side there, you can see the link there. You can choose to create a new record or upload a record you've already created using this form. So you can edit records that you've already created. If it's the first time you've used this, you'll always choose new record to get started. One thing to note that your journal does need to have an ISSN to use this tool. So if you don't have one, we recommend you use the web deposit form as an alternative helper tool. So once you started the new record, you would select the type of record you wish to register. As I said, right now, your only options are going to be journal articles and grants, but that will change soon. So we are adding additional support for those. Right now, we're just going to kind of walk through how to do a journal article, since that is a common one and also all that we have available for today. So if you, after you choose that, this will take you to your next screen, which will ask you to fill in various fields of information about the article that you're registering. Anything that has an asterisk is mandatory. This includes article title, the DOI, landing page, and then you'll add authors, and you can add ORCID IDs, institutions and affiliations, etc. Once that's done, then you'll include information about the journal title the article is being published in. You have the option to include issue information, but you don't have to. And in fact, oftentimes we recommend that it might be easier to not add things like a journal level DOI or a journal URL, especially since you have an ISSN, which links directly to that journal. Once you've added all that information, then you can hit send and it will, or hit submit, and that will send the information to us. Hopefully, after you hit submit, you will be greeted with this screen, which will tell you that your journal article has been successfully submitted. It will give you a JSON file that shows the metadata that you have submitted to us. You have a submission ID. It shows you the DOI that you've just registered. So that's helpful because you get kind of real-time validation that it has worked. Also, you could receive this screen, hopefully not, but just in case, there is information that will be provided to you if something has gone wrong in the deposit. We have a list of error messages on our website. So if you are greeted with this and you're not sure, you can go to our website and see some of those common error codes and error messages, and maybe you can figure out what has gone wrong. Also, obviously, you can contact support at crossref.org and we can help you out with that as well. In addition to the metadata manager, we do have other content registration methods. So if you are not doing XML, you can do XML. You can also use OJS. We do have the web deposit form, which I mentioned earlier, which is a very, very basic form. You enter your data field by field, and it writes and submits the XML for processing. You don't need to know XML to use that form or metadata manager. You just type in the information straight in. If you at this time, if you are depositing something other than journals or grants, you need to use a helper tool, you would use the web deposit form, as that can support books, conference proceedings, reports, dissertations, things like that. There are some metadata elements that you can't currently register as part of your initial deposit in the web deposit form, but there are other tools that are available that can help you deposit those, such as funding and license information, text and data mining URLs, and your references. So those would be available in a deposit after your initial DOI is registered. Let's move on to the next screen, which is updating existing metadata records. So as we mentioned, as Colin mentioned, maintaining your metadata is an obligation. So there is a fee when you initially register your DOIs and your metadata record, but you can make any number of updates to the metadata record after your initial registration. And these updates are always free of charge. Once you start depositing metadata with Crossref, maintaining it is key to keeping it clean, complete, and up to date. So what we mean by that is clean is that you identify and correct any errors, typos, spelling, etc. Complete is that you add additional metadata to a record should that information become available. And by that we mean maybe ORCID IDs, ROR IDs, grant information, things that maybe you didn't have available when you initially registered the DOI. And then up to date, meaning that metadata does change over time. So one of the most common ones is resolution URL changes. Maybe you've updated where your site is hosted. Maybe you've transferred journals. So you want to make sure that your DOIs are still resolving correctly. And this also includes things such as retractions and updates. It's important that readers can always find and use the content that is published. Incorrect or outdated metadata will not help researchers find your content, and errors may result in miscitations and all-around confusion. So we always want to stress that you not just register your DOIs, but come back and make sure it's all correct. And again, there's no fee to update the metadata on existing records. To correct or update metadata for content where you've already registered, you can use many of the helper tools I already mentioned. So with OJS plugin, you can find the record you wish to update, leave the relevant field blank to delete it, or you can add new metadata to update it and deposit it again. If you're using the web deposit form, you can also make changes, but please note that you will have to enter all of the metadata for that record all over again. So for instance, if you just need to correct a last name, you will need to add the title and the abstract and the landing page and the authors again to update it in that way. You can redeposit it in an XML file with a missing element. If you do decide to do that, we just ask, you want to make sure that you update your timestamp. If you're familiar with XML files, you will understand what that means. If you are not interested in using XML, don't worry about that. And for URL updates, you don't need to resubmit the metadata. You can simply send us a CSV file of the DOIs with their new URLs, and we will update that for you. There are also extensive instructions on how to update resolution URLs, and I think I'm going to get to that in a slide or two, so I will hold off on talking more about that. And then updating existing records in bulk. There are a few metadata fields that you can update in bulk. So either by uploading a CSV into our web deposit form or a text file, which I'll get to in a moment. The CSV needs to be in a specific format, and we do have templates available on our website. And they need to contain the list of DOI records that need updating in one column and the update in the other columns. Here some of those that metadata that can be updated in this way are funding data, similarity check URLs, text and data mining URLs, and license info. And what we mean by bulk, in case that's confusing, is that say you want to subscribe to the similarity check service, for instance, and you have not been providing similarity check URLs with your existing content, you don't need to go back in and redeposit each DOI. You can use the uploading tool on our web deposit form and just create a CSV file. And that makes it a lot easier and faster. And finally, as I mentioned before, a very common one is updating resolution URLs in bulk. So you can send a text file to our support team. We also have a way where you can do it yourself. So you don't have to wait for us. And if you go to the link when we send out the slides, you can see we have step-by-step instructions on our website in the documentation for how to do that. And especially if you've moved to a new website, for example, that might be a situation where you would need to do that. All right, so I flew through that. I'm sure there were a lot of questions, so hopefully Shane and Colin were able to get to those. And right now, I'm going to pass it over to you, Colin, to talk a little bit about invoicing and then wrap us up before questions.
Thanks, Kathleen. If you want to hop over to the next slide here. There we go. Yeah. So if you're already a member of Crossref and you are not in our GEM program, so if you're not in one of the 77, 78 countries eligible for fee-free membership through our GEM program, then you will have already paid your prorated annual membership fee. So the first year that you join Crossref, you pay a fee for just however many months are left in the calendar year. So if you join today, you're paying for May through December 2026. And then in January 2027, and each January thereafter, you will be invoiced for a full year's annual membership fee at the annual membership fee tier rate that you qualify for. We also issue invoices quarterly for content registration fees. That's in January alongside your annual membership fee, and then again in April, July, and October. These content registration fee invoices are issued, they display the information by prefix. They tell you what month the DOIs were registered in. They tell you what type of material was registered. So a journal article, a book chapter, data set, etc. And they tell you whether that material was current year or back year, CY or BY. That bit matters because for certain material types, there is a lower fee for backfile material than for current year material. We accept payments via credit and debit card. We accept payments via bank and wire transfer, and we accept payments via check. Now, one thing I should note about the content registration fees, first, as Kathleen mentioned, this is a one-time fee for each new DOI you register. So once you've registered a DOI for the first time, you can update its metadata as many times as you need for free. This is to encourage you to continually make sure that your DOI's metadata is as accurate and comprehensive as it can be. I'll also mention that these quarterly content registration fees are only sent if you accrue at least $100 in content registration fees in a particular quarter or over several quarters. So, for example, we're in the middle of Q2 right now, and if you've just joined yesterday and maybe you register 10 DOIs by the end of Q2, which is by the end of June, that would only be $10. Which is not yet $100, which means that you would not receive a $10 invoice because that's less than the $100 threshold that it takes us to send you that invoice. Then maybe in Q3, you register 99 DOIs. So by itself, that $99 is not above that $100 threshold, but then we'll roll that $10 in from Q2, which means that you would have a total invoice for quarter two and quarter three of $109. And so we would send you that invoice at that point at the beginning of October for Q2 and Q3. The only exception to this is January, that January invoice, that fourth quarter invoice. We will always send you an invoice for any remaining DOIs that you haven't yet paid for in the preceding year in January, alongside your annual membership fee invoice for that new year. So if you only register 10 DOIs in all of 2026, you won't get a quarterly invoice until January of 2027 for $10 plus your annual membership fee of whatever membership fee tier you qualify for. Believe that's the end of the invoicing section. Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. We have a couple different resources here for you. Shane has been very diligently sharing a lot of links in the chat here. If you haven't popped into the chat to take a look at these, to take a look at the links that Shane has shared, you can do so now. We have a members area on our website with a ton of documentation and guidance for new members and longtime members. We have a very active community forum, the Crossref community forum, which you can see in that third link there. You can always reach out to us privately and directly at the contact form that's linked there in the fourth URL. And likewise, if you ever need to update your account details, such as if someone leaves from your organization, or if you need to add depositor credentials for a new person, or if your billing email address changes, or anything like that, please reach out to us directly so that we can get that updated so that we aren't trying to send you your invoices and those invoices are bouncing because your billing contact is no longer an active email address. As much as we can avoid it, we don't want any disruption in the service of your membership. If you're hosting your materials via OJS, there is great OJS documentation on the Public Knowledge Project's PKP's website there. They're the developers of OJS at that second to last link there. And then likewise, if you have questions as you're implementing OJS, PKP has their own community forum, which is also very active and where many of the questions you may have likely already been asked and answered. Next slide, if you don't mind, Kathleen. Questions? Cool. This is the open question section. I'm very proud of us for hitting this right on time. Good work, team. So we've already had a bunch of questions in the chat. One of the questions, we'll just can breeze through these here unless there are new ones coming in. One question was, if you have multiple journals, do they each need their own DOI prefix? The answer to that is no. You can register DOIs for all materials on your membership's single DOI prefix. We had a question about which deposit method you should use. Shane linked in the Q&A section a flowchart that we have on our website. There's not a single answer to this. It really depends on a couple of different things. If you're registering DOIs for journal articles and you're hosting your journal via OJS and your journal has an ISSN already, then we encourage you to use OJS's built-in Crossref depositor tools. If you have a journal with an ISSN but are hosting your materials on another platform, then we encourage you to use our metadata manager. And if you're hosting your materials not via OJS and you don't have an ISSN, then you will need to use our web deposit form. But again, we do encourage you just to wait until you have your ISSN to begin registering DOIs, as it will make life easier for you and for us in the long run. Let's see. What else? If you're registering DOIs for materials other than journal articles, such as book chapters, you'll need to use the web deposit form for those at this moment. Although, again, as Kathleen mentioned, we are going to start supporting book chapters, dissertations and theses, reports, and conference proceedings in our metadata manager probably within the next couple of months. So that should make depositing DOIs for those types of materials easier as well. Let me take a quick look at the chat to see what questions we have here. Kathleen or Shane, if you have any questions you want to answer aloud, feel free to jump in. We have a question here. We're assigning DOIs retroactively to historical journal articles via our new publication platform, Scholastica. The whole assigning DOIs retroactively is prohibitive? Question mark. Um, I'm not sure if so as I mentioned in the invoicing section, older articles, so anything published 3 or more years ago, are billed at a lower rate um, than current year articles. So current year articles, anything published in the current or past 2 years, are billed at $1 for each DOI. If you're going back and registering DOIs for historical materials, um, the anything published 3 or more years ago, the fee is 15 cents per DOI. And we have that to incentivize you to register DOIs for those backfile articles because they're already likely to have been cited. And as you register DOIs for older materials, that helps sort of fill in a piece in the scholarly puzzle. I'll also mention that, yeah, so the question is including DOIs in older reference lists is not a requirement. We only ask that you start reference linking for newly published articles going forward. And we ask that you do that within 18 months of joining Crossref. So please don't feel obligated to register those. To rather, please don't feel obligated to include DOIs in the reference sections of already published articles. Obviously, you can't go back and reprint if you have a physical version of your journal. You can't go back and reprint, 100 years worth of articles just to include the DOIs in there. I'll also say that if you're using Scholastica, we didn't mention this in the presentation, but Scholastica, like OJS, has powerful built-in depositor tools with it. So get in touch with the team at Scholastica, and they will be able to help guide you use the built-in Scholastica depositor tools to hopefully take some of the manual metadata submission labor off of your back.
We have a question about uploading chapters to a textbook in bulk. Um, Whether you can do it in, it's, there's metadata submission for chapters is no different than metadata submission for anything else, that you have the options of if you can construct XML or have it constructed for you by a platform, a service provider, some kind of integration, then you can do it in bulk. Like XML is the answer to how to submit metadata in bulk. If you don't have that option and you use one of our helper tools, then you have to do it one at a time, entering, like copying or entering or copy pasting each metadata element into the form for each chapter, including the DOI, including the landing page URL. Um, so whether there's a bulk option for you just depends on what your kind of resources and technical capacities are.
We have a question in the chat about fake DOIs, which is an interesting one that Evans has seen some fake DOIs in some journals that start with DX. That's actually an interesting question. The so right now, the recommended standard for displaying a DOI is that you should do the https://doi.org/DOI. Um, the previous standard prior to, I believe, 2017 was that DOIs be displayed with this DX resolver in front of them. So I'll pop a link in the chat here. This is a legit, this, what I've just posted here, dx.doi.org/DOI is a legitimate DOI. And this is just the sort of outdated display guideline that includes this old DX DOI resolver URL. Now, there are fake DOI organizations, providers, however. So that's something to be aware of. The DOI Foundation, which is the sort of top level organization that manages DOI prefixes between the different DOI registration agencies, has some more information about fake DOI organizations, which at the link that I've just posted in the chat there. So you can take a look there to watch out for those. We had a question here. Can a DOI be assigned to a book outside our journal? Kathleen, I see you're typing an answer. Do you want to take that one live?
Oh, I was a little bit confused, so maybe some clarification on it. If it's do you mean you are publishing journals and books, then yes, you can publish journal articles and assign DOIs to your journal articles, and also assign book DOIs as well. Register your books. I don't know, Colin, did you read that differently? I'm not sure if maybe uh, the member can clarify.
Yeah, if Kathleen didn't just answer your question there, maybe you can let us know if there's anything we missed. This question here about ORCID details, ORCID ID details in the metadata is a good one. I don't know if Shane or Kathleen, you know more about ORCID than I do on the technical support side.
Uh, yeah, we do have a kind of relationship with Orchid where if you add the Orchid for an author, and that author, obviously they have to have an Orchid profile in order for you to add the Orchid. They will get an email from Orchid asking them to grant permissions for Crossref to add that record to their profile. And if the author agrees to that, then it will automatically be added. But if the author doesn't agree, then it won't. It's in their hands, really. There are also other ways for them if they don't agree to the auto update, or even if you don't include the ORCID, though we encourage you to include them. They can add works to their ORCID profile using the DOI, and it will import the metadata over from Crossref and add it to the ORCID profile. Um, Authors tend to like the auto update option better because in tiny little text at the bottom, it says that the work was added by Crossref rather than if they use the DOI and import it themselves, it will say that the author added the work, and it feels like more official to them if it says the work was added by Crossref. So they do tend to prefer that auto update option.
Thanks, Shane.
Um,
Yeah, do you want to take this next one?
yeah, sure. We do. So if you mean by we didn't really cover this in great detail. I'll add our programmatic metadata submission option in the chat. I'll add a link to that documentation. It is an API. We tend to not use the word API but for this because when we talk about our API, we tend to mean our metadata retrieval API, which is totally different. But you can use an HTTP post transaction to submit XML files to our endpoint. Um, yeah, I just added a link in the chat, so that I'll throw it in the Q&A as well for good measure. Uh, and that yeah, that lets you post your files programmatically, either one at a time or um, in bulk. But you have to be able to, create valid XML. In terms of, we do have a test system. We don't set up authentication to the test system by default because very few people use it. It's not useful if you're using helper tools. It's only minimally useful, honestly, if you're using XML submissions. But the one thing it's useful for is testing the process of doing this HTTP post transaction to make sure you can hit that endpoint. So if you want credentials for the test system, just contact us and we'll set you up with them. We also, sort of unrelated, well, semi-related, we also have a XML parser. So if you're in the process of kind of building a script or um, an integration that will create XML, like Crossref XML for you for the purposes of registering DOIs, and you want to check that that XML is valid per our schema, we have a parser that you can just kind of upload a file and it will tell you whether it's valid or not, and if it's not, where the errors are. Um, yeah, so you don't necessarily need to submit to the test system just to check whether the XML is valid. But you can submit to the test system to check whether you can submit to the endpoint. That's really what it's good for.
Yeah, and I just want to caution for everyone to avoid assigning or registering test DOIs. You should
Oh
only
yeah.
be submitting uh, DOI metadata for real DOIs that refer to real objects.
Yeah, definitely anything you send to the production system needs to refer to some actual publication. And if you can have a real DOI and like if you're ready to register it and your first few attempts fail, that's testing the process, but with a real DOI that once it succeeds is correct and that you will maintain persistently for forever rather than, just throwing fake metadata and fake DOIs at the system, which is really not a great idea.
Yeah, if you're testing your first article, maybe don't assign it a DOI with a suffix of like test 123 ABC or something, unless you're comfortable with that being the DOI suffix in perpetuity. We're almost at time here. We have one more good question. This is from someone who is submitting their metadata through a sponsoring organization. We know many of you are independent members of Crossref. Some of you may also be sponsored members of Crossref. If you're having any difficulty with your sponsoring organization, if they're not responding, or if for some reason they become inactive, you're always welcome to reach out to us at member@crossref.org or via that contact form that Shane shared earlier to explain the situation. And we are happy to try to get in contact with your sponsor for you to figure out what's going on and how we can assist you. I think we are at time now. I hope we've answered all of your questions adequately and given you some perspective on how to get started here as a member of Crossref. The thing we want to really emphasize is that uh, DOIs are long-term commitments to stewardship of the materials that those DOIs refer to and the metadata surrounding those materials. So just make sure that as you're getting started, that you are thinking about the long term, even if you're just registering your first DOIs here. Um, you can always submit corrections to your metadata. You can always update the metadata for a DOI. You can you start out how you can, and then work to enrich and improve as you go on here. The Crossref membership and support teams that Kathleen and Shane and I are on are always here to support you in that process. So you can always reach out to us with any questions or search our community forum, as I mentioned before, for questions that may have already been asked or to ask your questions to us directly there. As I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, we will be sending out this recording in the next couple of days to you, so you'll be able to review it if we talked about anything too quickly, or if you'd like to share it around with anyone else on your team. We are always here for you, and we are really excited to have you starting out with us on this journey of being a Crossref member. Thanks so much for being with us today, and have a really lovely afternoon or evening or wherever it is in your part of the world.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.